Good morning, C.W. Henry School. This is Miss Davis coming to you virtually, bringing you another Black History Bite of the day. As you know, across the month of February, I am sharing a daily Black History Bite in honor of Black History Month. We know that Black history is American history, and I'm so excited to highlight it with you. Today, on February the 16th, we're going to be learning more about somebody who I predict many of you have learned about before. Curious who this person is? Drum roll, please. Today, we're going to be focusing on the life of Frederick Douglass. Now, if you've never heard of Frederick Douglass before, he is known as the Great Emancipator. Here are two pictures of him during his lifetime. When he was born, his full name was Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. He was born in February 1818, and he died on February 20th, 1895. During his life, he was an American social reformer. He fought for change. He was an abolitionist, somebody who wanted to end slavery, as well as an orator, a writer, and a statesman. He was born in the state of Maryland, and he was born into slavery as an enslaved person. His actual birth date is unknown because enslaved people did not have birth certificates. He chose to commemorate and celebrate his birthday on February the 14th, which is why we're focusing on him today. As an enslaved child, he lived with his grandparents and only saw his mother a few times before her death. She was also an enslaved person. When he was 8 years old, Frederick went to live with a carpenter in Baltimore, Maryland. Although it was against the law, the carpenter's wife taught Frederick how to read. This is where he first learned about abolition. Abolition is the movement to end slavery. A few years later, Frederick was sent back to the country to live with a different slave owner named Edward Covey. This was a very abusive and brutal slave owner. Frederick was jailed or sent to jail because he planned to escape from Covey. 2 years later, he did escape from Baltimore and he fled to a northern state, the state of New York. It was at that time that he changed his name to Frederick Douglass, and he settled in the state of Massachusetts in New England with his wife. After he escaped from slavery, he became a national leader of the abolitionist movement in the states of Massachusetts and New York. He became very famous for his speeches and the writing that he did about anti-slavery. In this bottom corner, you see a picture, a drawing of Frederick Douglass. This is from the 1960s, where he was honored on a postal stamp. So when he lived in Massachusetts, Frederick Douglass joined a church and a number of other abolitionist organizations fighting to end slavery in the United States. When he was only 23 years old, he gave his first speech about abolition. He was nervous, but his speech was very powerful. Most abolitionists, or people fighting to end slavery, were white. And because they were white, they were not able to give a firsthand account of the evils of slavery. As we learned, Frederick Douglass was an enslaved person in the beginning of his life, so he could talk about it from a personal perspective. Throughout his adult life, he wrote several autobiographies describing his experiences as an enslaved person. One of them is called his Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, which was published in 1845. This book became a bestseller and was influential in promoting the cause of abolition, as was the second book that he wrote called My Bondage and My Freedom, which was published in 1855. After the Civil War, Douglass remained an active campaigner against slavery and wrote his last autobiography, The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. This book covers events both during and after the Civil War. Throughout his adult life, Douglass also actively supported women's suffrage, and he held several public offices. If you're not familiar with what women's suffrage was, it is the fight for women to be able to vote. In this bottom right-hand corner, you see a photograph of the house that Frederick Douglass lived in with his family. This house is in Washington, D.C. It's called Cedar Hill, and it's now preserved as a National Historic Site. People visit it as tourists. So this brings you to the end of our Black History Bite of the Day. I just wanted to highlight for you two additional resources if you want to learn a little bit more about Frederick Douglass. First of all, this is a cover of a book called Two Friends, which talks about Susan B. Anthony, a leader in women's suffrage, as well as Frederick Douglass. There is a YouTube video of someone reading this book aloud, and I'm going to link it in the description of this video. On the right-hand side, you see the cover of a book called All About Frederick Douglass. And this book is on Epic. So if you're interested in reading more about him and learning more, check this out on Epic. That brings you to the end of your Black History Bite for the day. I really enjoyed sharing more about Frederick Douglass's life with you, and I look forward to coming back with you tomorrow for another Black History Bite of the day. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye.